Hey, remember when I said I was gonna make this video like over a month ago? Yeah, well, I'm doing it now. Play intro. Oh shit, wait, I actually wasn't supposed to read that part. So you wanna not suck at Absolver. Before we get started with today's lesson and how to make a video that's both irrelevant and unhelpful at the same time, I do want to emphasize that the title says not suck instead of never lose. You're not going to come out of one video playing like Bruce Lee if he was more alive and somehow transported inside of Absolver instead of playing it, because I don't think he was much of a gamer. But you will come out of the video with a few hot tips on how to not blow more balls than a lady getting pizza delivery without having any cash. To start off, don't just spam the attack button without understanding what moves you're actually doing. Only spam when you know exactly how bullshit and overwhelming the combo is. I know this seems obvious, but you might be surprised at how often you catch yourself button mashing even later into the game. The combat in Absolver is fast enough to overwhelm you at times, especially when you're just starting out, which I do hope is the case considering the once again very literal title of this video. Mashing buttons only gets you so far in this game, as experienced players and even bots will recognize attacks and punish you for them frequently, so you should always be aware of how to mix things up. In line with mixing things up, it's also important to know how and when to feint. If you don't know how to feint for whatever reason, you just have to press the block button during an attack. Once you feint an attack, it'll skip to the next move in the chain, and it's important to know when to feint in your combat deck and what attacks will follow. Also recognize how your opponent reacts to you feigning attacks. Most cult players will probably try to absorb your attack, so it's best to follow up with an attack that's fast enough to punish them. On the other hand, some players just frolic about like a dancing, prancing pussy, which usually escapes not only your feint, but also whatever attack follows unless you stop and reset for a split second before hitting again. In fact, it's important as a general rule in combat games to read and react to your opponent's behavior, and Absolver is no exception. Always try to learn your opponent's attacks and capitalize on whatever habits they show, on top of making sure you have the predictability of a crack addict. You should constantly be improving your combat deck and moves to better understand what's effective for you and what isn't. Or actually, I'm sure you can find some videos on YouTube that tell you all the best moves and ruin the fun. I mean, give some good tips. It's also important to time your button mashing appropriately to increase the speed of spamming attacks. Basically, just press attack right after you hit your opponent. Watching the little bar on the screen can sometimes be more confusing than just waiting for your kick to land. On the defensive end, it goes without saying that you should always use your style's ability to punish your opponent, but don't underestimate the effectiveness of blocking. Especially while you're still learning, blocking can be a great way to learn attacks and chains without risking damage from dodging or parrying the wrong way, or absorbing at the wrong time if you're a bitch. You can also press the prance button to dodge a good 3 meters to the side if you want to be that guy, but it's best to save this move for escaping from a ledge or putting your enemies back to one. As far as the shard abilities go, you have a few different choices for what you use alongside healing. I guess you could choose to not have healing, but then you couldn't run away like a dickhead semi-regularly throughout the fight and then struggle to deal damage to your opponent so you can heal without actually taking damage yourself. You can bet your opponent will be doing it, so why not fight fire with borderline fight-ruining mechanics? Besides the heal though, I personally like to use the shockwave so I can push back my opponent when I'm being overwhelmed, but it's ultimately up to you to find what abilities complement your playstyle the most. Weapons aren't as useful until later in the game when you have more wizard shards to use up, but once you get to that point, it can be handy to change your moveset in the middle of the fight by magicking a sword into existence and slashing away. Whether you use a sword or gauntlets is entirely up to you, but swords seem to have the more interesting and unpredictable attacks in my opinion. Also, if for some reason a developer is watching this video, you guys should totally add a sword and dagger weapon. And maybe a sloth mask while you're at it. That's pretty much it as far as beginner tips that you might not have thought of, because you're actually a beginner, right? I could throw in a few basic ones like don't fucking run out of stamina or definitely use the force push ability to ledge people and win the round, no honor. But I think you can figure most of those out on your own. If not, I'll just put a bunch of them on screen right now and you can read through them. You're gonna have to pause it though because I'm ending the video